Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the MRC Mega Team vs Team event for February 2021. I'm your host, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And welcome back to some absolutely fantastic action ahead at the circuit of Bathurst. Now, I hope you've all had a good week so far. If you're tuning in today, whether it be live, alternatively later on this evening, I hope you're having a good start to your week, whether it be a Monday evening. And with that, let's introduce the story, carrying on from last week. So last week was round one, where in round one, it was a case of there were 3 lobbies. We had 21 drivers. Well, sorry, not 21 drivers, 42 drivers, 21 teams. And all of our drivers were trying to find their feet and essentially make their way up into the top brackets, or the top splits, if you will. After 1 week of racing, well, 1 round of racing, so last Monday, at Tsukuba in the Renault Clio V6s, the V624s from the year 2000, we saw 21 drivers progress to the top bracket and 21 drivers regress to the lower bracket. And now it's a question: who is going to be able to stay on track and stay in the fight to get to round number 3, which is in a week's time? But before we can get to round 3, we've got to get through round 2. And let's talk a little bit about what the round entails. So today, you're going to be seeing lobby 2 of the top bracket. So there are 2 top bracket lobbies. I'm casting one of them, and we've got David Whitehouse, DW Commentary on YouTube, casting the other. The idea being that 11 drivers are in lobby 1, 10 drivers in lobby 2 here. And by the end of it tonight, we should be seeing in lobby 2 in particular, 5 drivers, the top 5 drivers who finish 1st to 5th in the race, progress to round number 3. And the bottom 5 drivers, those who finish P6 through to P10, they will be eliminated from the competition. So they will be not progressing any further, and they will not be accruing any more points in order to support their team in becoming the team that takes the crown of this team versus team event. So that is the story, and that is the situation today. But of course, whilst we've got a whole series here to talk a story about, it wouldn't be without asking what is the story behind each of our drivers who we're going to be seeing tonight. Well, we're going to be coming on to those guys very specifically and very shortly. But before we come on to them, of course, let's introduce the combo. We're at the Mount Panorama Motor Racing Circuit in Australia. The local time is 1:30 in the afternoon. The clouds have just come over. It is overcast, but a moderate temperature. Indeed, you can't see it, but up in the commentary box here, I've got my shorts and vest on because it is very humid here, despite the conditions. And all of our drivers will be feeling it, and all of our drivers will be hot-tempered today in their rather hot-braking front-engine front-wheel drive cars known as the Peugeot RCZ, the Group 4 race car variant in particular, where all of our drivers here will need to master the art of understeer, or at least controlling understeer and getting on the power at the right time. Because these cars are quite odd to drive. Very different from your typical car in the fact that whilst your typical car may be front-engine front-wheel drive, if you drive something like a Honda Civic, for example, alternatively a number of other hatchbacks that you will typically see on the roadway, these ones with quite a lot of engine power will find that actually they've got to be able to get the steering straight before they can put their foot fully down and apply full throttle, otherwise they're going to be shredding their front tyres. So without further ado then, let's hop down to the circuit and start introducing our drivers one by one. So we're going to be starting off then, as we take a look at the notes, and say hello to Hero Cram, SBR Sim Racing, and also Can't Shake the Cliche in the chat. And if you are tuning in on Twitch right now and you have access to the chat, be sure to say hi, don't be shy. It's always good to see plenty of friendly faces in here. But as we go through our program notes for today and start introducing each of our drivers, we will start off with IGTSH's Ricci. So, the Hungarian driver representing the independent GT Sport Hungary community here. Ricci had a very good outing last time out in round number 1 at Tsukuba, coming first in Lobby B, and now looking to progress even further into this team versus team championship by trying to pick up a good result today, as he goes and picks up a 3.5 second penalty there for cutting a little bit of the track limits at the dipper, something all of our drivers will need to be wary of. That is Ricci. We then hop over to White Shark Jim, who at the other end of the spectrum, the British driver representing the Digital Car Culture Club community, or DCC for short, finished 7th in Lobby B last time, so just about squeezed his way into the top bracket at the end of round number 1 with that lovely white and red liveried Peugeot RCZ there with the DCC logo on the side of it, loud and clear. And be sure to subscribe to the DCC magazine if you haven't already, of course. A little bit of a shout out there as he picks up a 3-second penalty for track limits at the Dipper, and we'll come on to the circuit in a little bit in terms of specifics. We're then going to be hopping over to Terence 322, the British driver, another British driver. Terence representing the FOE racing community today. And in terms of his outing, last time out, he came home in 6th place in Lobby A. So looking to make his way a little bit further up the field here today. It's going to be a tough one, of course, but he'll be doing his utmost in order to make it into the 3rd round rather than see elimination. Of course, nobody wants to see elimination here. We're then going to be hopping over to H Racing Green, 91, another British driver who representing the SBR community, and I know we've got a couple of the SBR guys in the chat here, came 5th last time out in Lobby C in what was one of the closest races with his fellow rival P1 Timberlake, who I believe is still on his way to the circuit. They're just getting the car to the circuit as we speak, but they had a very close rivalry and they're going to be reigniting that rivalry tonight, I'm sure of that one. We then introduce, once again, Marky Boy 92. You'll remember Marky Boy as being the driver who won in Lobby C last time out at Tsukuba in round 1. Marky Boy establishing a stronghold over the race lead and eventually converting that into a confident win despite the last-minute drama of the Tsukuba race. We then bring ourselves over to Awesome Alex, a new driver who we haven't seen on camera from our perspective until today. British driver representing the DR community, or the driver's room community there, in the blue, silver and black livery Peugeot RCZ. Awesome Alex last time out in Lobby B finishing 4th, and from what I understand, he was on course to finish approximately 7th or 8th in that lobby until literally the last minute drama that happened in Lobby B, where a lot of drivers ran out of fuel at the last minute and realised they needed to pit. Alternatively, he just ran out of fuel just seconds before the finish line, and Alex was able to capitalise there. So he'll be looking to make his way up into the top 5 today, of course. We've then got MRC Buddy, who I believe representing the MRC community as per his gamer tag, is a stand-in for MG Jason 01, and MG Jason last time out in Lobby A finished 7th, so just squeezing his way in. That's what I believe in my notes, but I may be wrong. But Buddy today looking to advance the MRC community further into this competition in the top bracket, with him being one of the only MRC drivers remaining. In fact, the only MRC driver remaining as I understand it, but I may be incorrect there. And we're still waiting on a couple more drivers to arrive. But before we do that, of course, we must introduce a Next Generation Racing's, or NXGN's, Hirokram, who we saw last time out in Lobby C. Hirokram being the one to come 2nd at Tsukuba in Lobby C. Not able to take the challenge to Marky Boy 92. It seemed as though whenever Hiro put his foot down and improved his pace, just that little bit more, enhanced his pace, Marky Boy had a response. But the question will be, will Marky Boy be able to beat Hirokram for a second time of asking tonight, or will it be a case that Hirokram finds himself on top? As in this final practice session right now, you can see that he's actually setting the fastest time of anybody so far. And in terms of other drivers then, so that is everybody, pardon me, who is in the lobby right now introduced. So we're just waiting on 2 more drivers, and that is P1 Timberlake and also Will RS. And as we hop back to the chat, we say hello to Vitor Knight 21, CP Racing Drivers Room, and also Kamaru. And we hope that you're all doing well and that you're having a good day, because we are indeed here, and I'm looking forward to some more fantastic racing. And I'm also just going to very quickly hop away from the circuit to make sure that I haven't missed any friend requests. So I should clarify, for those wondering why I'm checking this, because I am also the host of tonight's lobby, so I will be getting proceedings underway, and if any issues should occur, we need to do any restarts, I'll be the one who's responsible for those. No additional friend requests, so it looks as though we are all good at the moment, but we're just waiting to see what can happen. And I'm very sorry to hear that, CP Racing, in terms of hitting a fallen curb, entering your street and blowing the side of your tyre out in a Vauxhall Wisdom. That is, in Vauxhall's Wisdom, you do not have a spare. That is not good. Oh, dearie me. But with the time winding down at the moment, then we're going to be getting underway in approximately 5 minutes with our qualifying. So the schedule for tonight, at the hour, so at 9 o'clock UTC in the evening here. Not local time, of course. Local time, it would be 1400 based on the clock. We're going to be getting underway with a 10-minute qualifying session, which will see our drivers place themselves for the race, of course. Now, the idea being here, as we get all the data up on screen whilst you're waiting, and it's always good to see what we can find out right now. The fastest lap being a 2-minute 10.1 set by IGTSH's Ricci. The idea being that 10 minutes of qualifying, whoever qualifies on pole will be starting on pole for the race. There's no reverse grids here today. It's all fastest first, first come, first serve. And I should point out, actually, we do have the driver of P1 Rule, who I believe is representing the P1RC team today in place of P1 Timberlake. So just to tell you a quick story, the German driver who we're going to introduce here. Last time out, Timberlake, who was the P1 driver within the Lobby C that we saw, and should be here tonight, but Rule is standing in for him. Timberlake finished 4th in a very close battle with H Racing Green 91, one that went down to the wire to the final lap, and he'll be looking to do his utmost to try and finish in the same position, if not higher today, to advance P1 into round number 3 top split. We are missing one other driver, and that is Will RS from the ODM community, who does have a couple of minutes left to go before we get cracking. And we're just checking our briefing notes and all of our messages to make sure we are not suddenly missing anybody at the 11th hour. And we're just going to check off screen once again. No, we are not missing anyone. Very sorry about that if you're getting annoyed with the screen switches. It's always good to see you, Craig. Didn't know if you wanted your actual name mentioned on the stream. But there we go. So, with everything introduced, let's talk a little bit about the race then. So, whereas qualifying is a 10-minute session, which it sees our drivers have to cope with both tyre wear and fuel depletion as well. Our drivers will be running the same settings as they would be in the race. In the race, it is 30 minutes long. It's an endurance race, so we are going to have 30 minutes of racing, and of course when the timer clicks over to the 30th minute, and then what that will mean is that at the end of the 30th minute, our drivers must finish the current lap they're on to complete their races. In terms of the tyre wear and fuel depletion that our drivers will have to deal with, tyre wear is set to ×3, and fuel depletion 2 ×5. Now, we are not expecting our drivers to run out of fuel in this one. Given the fact that the lap times are coming in at 2-minute 10s, you can do a quick bit of maths and anticipate we're probably looking at somewhere in the region of 14 to 15 laps. On the flip side, however, what we are expecting is that because our drivers have access to the Racing Super Soft compound all the way up to the Racing Hard compound, that we are going to be seeing pit stops for new tyres because, and this is where the car comes in, the Peugeot RCZ, for the uninitiated, is a front-engine, front-wheel drive car, and the Group 4 race car here that we're exhibiting is one which has got a very powerful engine available to it, but it is quite a heavy car, and not only that, it is very aggressive on its front tyres, because, like any front-engine, front-wheel drive car, front engine means the weight is concentrated towards the front. Front-wheel drive means that the front wheels are doing everything. They're deploying the power, i.e. deploying the power when the car needs to accelerate out of a corner into an acceleration zone, and they're also doing the primary bearing of steering round a corner. So add 2 and 2 together, what that means is those front tyres are going to get absolutely worn, whereas the rear tyres of these cars are going to be pretty much scot-free in terms of tyre wear by the end of tonight. And in fact, you can imagine that our drivers would love to keep only their rear tyres on and swap out the front tyres every time they come into the pits, but GT Sport says we have to change all 4 tyres, so be it. But you can already see that after only 2 laps on Rule's car, for example, if you look in that graphic in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, he does have a small amount of graining on a set of Racing Super Softs in terms of those front tyres. Both tyres showing a little bit of graining, and you can imagine that after a couple more laps, that graining and that tyre wear is going to become amplified and even more pronounced. And as we're counting down the time here with only 1 minute to go, until we're meant to be getting underway here, we are going to be doing one quick check around very shortly to make sure that we've got everybody who we are expecting to have here, and then we're going to be getting underway. I will take you through a lap of Bathurst, the Mount Panorama circuit. When we get into qualifying, we'll ride on board with some of our drivers. But you can see, for example, here Gran, whereby he's on his 4th lap on a set of Racing Super Softs already. Well, that front right in particular is looking quite heavily worn, and that's where the tyre considerations come in. and they've got to worry about it. And good evening to Jagernat in the chat. Hope you're doing well, good sir. Now, with the clock striking the hour, we're going to be doing one more check to make sure we haven't missed anybody. So give us 2 seconds, folks. We just need to make sure of this. Okay, we have no active friend requests, so as a result, that means that everybody we are expecting to be here is here. So we're just going to put a warning out to our drivers. Which is, it's go, go, go for qualifying. And wish them all a friendly bit of good luck as well. And here we go then, ladies and gentlemen. 10 minutes of qualifying. Let's begin. So as we flick over to qualifying then, we are waiting for our drivers to come out the pits and begin. And as they all start coming out the pits, all piling out, of course it's going to be a race to see who can get ahead of the field at first. And of course, Craig, we would only wish good luck to Alex, but of course I'm not allowed to be biased towards anyone, so good luck to all of our drivers. But what you can see here, the focus will be, given the fact the lap is over 2 minutes long and we've only got 10 minutes in qualifying, our drivers will want to try and get to the front of the pack as quickly as possible and be the first one out the pits effectively, because at the end of the day, the further you are ahead on circuit, the more time you get, or effective time I should say, because the problem is as well, if you get caught behind a driver, particularly a driver who's faster than you, around this circuit, and you're on a qualifying lap, once you've gone up the hill, it is going to be pandemonium because it can compromise your entire lap unless you're trying to use them for a cheeky slipstream. But then again, that is a huge risk because with the slipstream comes the dirty air and additional understeers. We say hello to DJ Rice83 in the chat. So as Hero Cram and also Terence are coming charging down into the dipper right now, so it's the little left-hander here. Let's just go through our field once again and see whether all of our drivers are spacing out or eternity. Is anybody doing some rather adventurous fuel burning at this point? And it looks as though nobody's committed to any major fuel burning, although I say that, it looks as though Rule has done a bit of fuel burning already. In fact, he's burnt quite a bit of fuel out of the car, and that will make the car much lighter by comparison with the cars ahead of him. As we see, also Alex picks up a 2.5 second penalty for cutting the track limits at the dipper on his warm-up lap. Now, he can burn that off quite rapidly, but he will need to get rid of it. I think he's quite conscious as well. He doesn't want to lose the toe of the guys ahead of him. And the reason he doesn't want to do that is because if he loses the toe of the guys ahead of him, he may lose out a little bit of time on the straights. But we're going to jump to the onboard of NXGN's Hero Cram as he takes us around for a lap. 23 corners, a very challenging circuit. So, coming out the final corner, then you're going to see he's absolutely stamping the throttle and staying as far to the right as humanly possible, crossing that start-finish line to go into the first corner, taking a left-hander here, braking hard into turn one. As you can do in these cars, he'll probably be running his brake balance 5 to the rear in the race, but in qualifying conditions, he might be preferring to take a brake bias that's towards the front, or alternatively more balanced towards the middle. But regardless, charging up straight down towards turn 2 now, you're going to see quite a long straight, this one going over a little hill, and now running up, going to be braking after the 100 board on the left-hand side here. In fact, braking at the 50 board, going very late on the brakes, through turn 2, and now coming up into what is known as the cutting, which is turn number 4, but before that he's got turn 3, a left-hander here where he's going to try and commit as flat out as possible, and stamp hard down on the brakes for the cutting, which is turn 4 here. Now he's got to get on the power as soon as possible to go into the double right-hander of turns 5 and 6, holding hard on the steering wheel here, up through 6, and now he's got to swing the steering wheel over to the left-hand side on the blind hill, which is turn 7, and now turn 8 and turn 9, 2 left-handers back-to-back here, using the full track width to his advantage, and now come up into turn number 11 before coming up to the section known as Skyline, where he's going to be going over the hill here at that billboard. This is the Skyline, so turns 12, 13, 14 and 15 all coming up, so here's 12, followed by 13, followed by 14, the double right-hander into the dipper, throwing the car in, and now 15 And through the dipper he goes, through 16 now, 17, and into Forest Elbow here at 18, where he's going to bring the car down. And he gets a really nice run into Forest Elbow there, albeit perhaps could have just been a little bit tighter initially, but it seemed to work out rather well. And now he's got the long run down towards the chase, where he's going to be coming up to the most difficult braking point on the circuit. Some would argue, especially when you're in race conditions, simply because you're carrying so much speed. But I think in qualifying, it's all about nailing the hill. And Hero Cram's done a good job of nailing the hill so far as he's coming down towards the chase, braking at that 100 board, nailing that braking point, cutting the car hard to the left. Now only one more corner to go as he's coming up to the final corner, and when he comes down to here, breaking up approximately the 50 board, it's going to complete the lap. And let's see what he's able to achieve on his opening flying lap as we hop away from the onboard perspective. And his opening lap will be, it looks like it's going to be a 209 or perhaps a 210, a 210.2. Behind him, Terence coming across with a much slower lap of a 212.6. We then got Marky Boy with a 211.0, and then we've got MRC Buddy with 211.7. Behind them, we've got White Shark, who's the next of our drivers to come across to complete a hot lap. And it looks like White Shark, well in fact White Shark's on an out lap right now, having gone into the pits at the end of the opening hot lap, perhaps trying to give himself some space on the circuit and worried that he burnt too much of the tyres off. And Alex, as he comes across, a 211.5, and then we've got H Racing Green coming across the line with a 211.3, and then we've got IGTSH's Ricci, I'm getting all my letters mixed up here, a 215.1. I think he'll be expected to do a bit more. And then we've got Rule from P1 coming across with a 211.0. So in these opening hot laps, the only driver who hasn't actually set a lap so far is White Shark Jim, but it looks as though Hero Cram has really got the lead on the competition after one flying lap, and he's going to have time to come around and pop in the pits. If he absolutely nails this, he'll just have enough time, but I think at the moment he may be looking to do just the one more lap. It's going to be a bit of a difficult one because our drivers have got balanced, and you can see already that Hero Cram, with a little bit of tyre wear, is well off his previous lap's pace. So I think on this one, he's just trying to get around it as quickly as possible. But in terms of the gaps, that is a huge gap. But then in the battle provisional P2, Marky Boy and Rule are very close together right now. And I think that these two in particular are going to be close as we go into the second half of qualifying. And remember, all our drivers have got to get themselves around before they go for another qualifying lap here if they've already done one hot lap, because with the tyres now being a bit worn, it's a case of you're fighting against a declining compound, and you're just not going to be able to get in as good a lap on your second hot lap unless you go for that tyre change. But then you can see it's 3 tenths between Rule and H Racing Green, so we've got a bit of a gap there, but a close midfield at the moment with Awesome Alex in P5, 2.5 tenths ahead of MRC Buddy, but 2 tenths down almost on H Racing Green. And then it's almost a second between Terence and Buddy. And between Terence and Ricci, it's 2.5 seconds. But I get the feeling Ricci may have had a very difficult lap and perhaps a compromised one, as Terence comes to the end of another lap here. And I think this might be the wrong call from Terence, because what this means is, in effect, this lap, unless he knows he can improve, and he does improve, in fact, he moves up to a 212.0, which promotes him up into P7, but a stronger P7. And Marky Boy improving to a 210.9. Well, he's definitely been using the slipstream of Terence there in order to get some improvement on lap laps. It's a tiny improvement. I think in Marky Boy's mind, he's thinking to himself, so long as I can stay on that front row and be alongside Hero Cram, I'll be able to have a good start in this race and be able to take the fight into turn 1. Now, some of you may be wondering at this point, okay, what about the grid as some of our drivers are coming in to go for a quick tyre change? Well, the grid at this circuit is very compact in the fact that wherever you start, when you've got a driver alongside you, if you start P1, the guy in P2 is literally alongside you exactly parallel. So it's not a case that you've got a little bit of a advantage, say a couple of meters advantage. No, you guys start side by side on that grid. But more importantly, if I remember correctly, the even numbers, so P2, P4, P6, P8, etc., they start on the left-hand side from the driver's perspective, the right-hand side from our perspective coming down to the grid. And that means they will have the inside line into turn 1. So from Marky Boy's perspective right now, he's probably thinking to himself, well, you know what? If I qualify P2, I've got the inside line into turn 1. So in fact, this is effectively a potential P1, it could be argued. And there's no bonus points for qualifying first here or getting the fastest lap. All the points are for where you finish. As we say hello to Zeronic in the chat. And that's important to keep in mind. Some of our drivers here will be targeting qualifying in even positions and not potentially looking to improve that much. But of course, the flip side of the coin is if you feel as though you've got a huge pace advantage, then you perhaps want to show it right now and get yourself all the way out the front of the grid, so that way you can run away at the start of the race. And in the 30 minutes, it'll make a huge difference because you may not get caught behind a slower driver. But as all of our drivers are already coming through right now, and remember, they will have the continuation time after this lap. So if they are on a lap, when that time remaining in the bottom right corner goes to 0, they can finish the lap, as we see one driver there has had to abort a lap. But Marky Boy coming around now on his 3rd flying lap here, but I don't think this is going to be an improvement unless he's pulled something magical out of the bag. Not quite. It was close, 2 attempts down, but I don't think it's going to be enough, and that means Marky Boy's qualifying session is over unless he somehow manages to wizard something on those worn tyres, which he may be able to do. But MRC Buddy, as White Shark Jim finally sits a qualifying lap, and it's a provisional P4 of a 2:11.0. Good lap by White Shark Jim there, putting in a good opener in terms of his qualifying. After what was a rather difficult opening to his qualifying, he's now put a 2:11.5 and that 2:11.0, so putting himself right up there for the DCC crew. Now, Hirokram, meanwhile, going around once again, and now in his final flying lap, having gone for that pit stop on those fresh tyres, and you can imagine that he's going to be looking to consolidate that pole position. But let's look through the field and see who's on a fresh set of tyres. Well, we've also got H Racing Green, who in fact we are going to hop on board with for a little bit now and just see what he's able to do as he charges up towards turn number 2. Already purple in sector 1 by half a tenth, and you can imagine he's probably getting a little bit of a distant tyre for Rule if he's just timed it right, but he's got to be conscious of the fact that as he goes over the hill here, Rule may be a bit slower because Rule does have the worn tyres by comparison to his own car, as we can see that we have now got the confirmation that the 10 minutes is over and everybody now needs to finish their current lap. So all of our drivers now will be trying to charge around as quickly as possible with the 2.5 minutes remaining. It's going to be tight and they need to nail this one. They'll just have enough time to finish their respective laps. And, well, Rule is actually doing a rather good job of keeping good distance to H Racing Green. And Green right now is probably praying to himself, right, Rule, just do not botch this. Do not make any mistakes. Just simply nail your lap and let me follow you along. Get that distance toe. Because you can see that Green, whilst he's not the fastest as they go over Skyline, he's 7 tenths up on his previous lap, and with a what would be a 2:10.6 at this point in time, that would put him well up in contention for the front row versus Marky Boy and Rule. So Racing Green here playing the tactical approach and seeing what he can achieve through qualifying in the slipstream of another car. And we're just going to hop away because we've got all of our drivers now coming through towards the end of their qualifying sessions. And we just try and find the lead driver of that pack as they come across the line. So I believe it is going to be Terence, as we see IGTSH's Ricci is on a fast lap here. And Terence coming across the line. Does he improve on those worn tyres? He does not. Then MRC Buddy does not either. NXGN, does he improve? He improves to a 209.8. I think that's going to demolish the field, in all honesty, folks. As we see that Marky Boy does not improve, nor does White Shark. Now we've got H Racing Green following Rule along. As well, I'd say Hirokram has just really put a huge amount of pace between himself and the rest of the field in qualifying. But of course, it's going to be a different matter in the race. As Rule comes across the line, does he improve? Yep, he improves to a 2:11.0, as does H Racing Green to a 2:10.5. So Racing Green making that tactical move work there. Also, Alex improving to a 2:10.7, up into the original P3, getting ahead of Marky Boy Rule. And I believe qualifying has completed, ladies and gentlemen. So there are your final qualifying standings. Ricci on pole. Ricci picking up that pole position. But now we move on to the race. So as we wind down to the grid then, on your right, it's Ricci. On your left, it is Hirokram. But behind them, Racing Green, Awesome Alex, and Marky Boy on Rule. And don't forget White Shark, Buddy, and Terence as well. What can our drivers at the rear of the field achieve as we're about to get underway with 30 minutes of action at Bathurst? And it's lights out and away we go, and it looks as though some of our drivers have been caught out by the machinery as Rule gets an absolute monster start, and Ricci just about gets a good enough start there into turn 1 to stay ahead of the field. As you can see, Rule jumped a huge number of cars and is up into P4, and Hirokram already having to go to defensive versus H Racing Green. Being caught out there, it looks like a number of our drivers were caught out by the starting procedure and the traction offered by the front engine front wheel drive cars as they all charge up towards turn 2. Now, of course, all of our drivers will want to try and tuck themselves onto that inside line to go fully defensive. Hirocram's going to do the same. Rule trying to get up the inside of Racing Green, but Racing Green's just done enough, or has he, to hold on as they come up into turn 3, and all our drivers will need to settle into an order here because you can't really go too wide into the cutting. It's very dangerous to do so, and you can see that Marky Boy having to go side by side with Racing Green, and also Alex trying to get in the mix as well, and they're going side by side continually up into 6 right now, and Racing Green finds himself, and he's into the wall. Racing Green is into the wall. I think there's a light bit of contact, but that has dropped some of his pace off, and it means that Rule right now is pulling away along with our leaders, as we can see behind them Marky Boy in P4 and also Alex behind him. Racing Green has dropped back to P6, White Shark Jim in P7. Terence is all the way down in P9 right now. He's had to give a bit of room up to Buddy as they come into the dipper for the first time asking, but Ricci pulling away with Hirocram, and behind them we can see that Marky Boy and Awesome Alex are leading that trail of the mid-pack right now. And remember, to get promoted to the 3rd round, you need to finish P5 or higher. So all of our drivers will want to be in that 5th place, if not higher and a bit more secure, as they come down onto the Conrod Straight and charge down towards the chase. Now up front you can see that Ricci doing a little bit of a side-to-side wiggle here, knowing that Hirocram's getting the slipstream versus him, and that means that as Rule tries to chase after him, Rule finds himself in no man's land at the moment. He hasn't got a tow or anything, he's just having to use the raw pace of the car. Coming down into the chase, Marky Boy at the head of the train, and I don't think, although there's a bit of dirt being kicked up, I think Josiah Driver's gone deep. Marky Boy in fact went very deep, and Awesome Alex is up into P4 at Marky Boy's mistake here, but will Marky Boy or H Racing Green come for a cutback? And you can see that Racing Green is coming back on the inside on Marky Boy as they come out the final corner, turn 23. So after one lap, it is Ricci ahead of Hirocram, followed by Rule, then Awesome Alex ahead of Racing Green, then White Shark Jim. Buddy alongside Marky Boy. Marky Boy losing so many places from one mistake at the chase, and in fact Buddy is up into P7 ahead of Marky Boy, who is ahead of Terence. And we're just going to do a quick wind back, ladies and gentlemen, and have a look at that race start on board Rule's car. So at the start, then, you're going to see from Rule, P5 on the grid. Watch how his launch is absolutely spectacular, and how he managed to just get himself past Awesome Alex, who stalled on the line, in fact. And then Rule found himself game 1 place, and I think he tried to go for another, but he noticed that Racing Green was just going to close the door on him and go defensive, so he decided to stay alongside and then pull back and look at what Hirocram and Racing Green were going to do. But that's how Rule's absolutely fantastic start took place. But we jump away from them right now to see what else is happening, and what you can definitely see is our top 3 drivers are pulling away, and Alex right now almost just out of that slipstream zone of Racing Green, who's behind him. That slipstream zone being 7.5 tenths. So what you can imagine is that if Alex could just get a little bit of more of a gap between himself and the 2 behind, he will find himself in a similar situation to Rule, and then he can calm himself down and do some tyre management. Now, the thing about this in particular, in this circuit and the cars we're driving here, is that tyre management is going to be absolutely critical to get these cars to go the distance and to get consistent lap times. Because you can imagine, front engine, front wheel drive cars, heavy cars, all the work's being done by those front tyres. They're going to be absolutely beating 7 shades out of the tyre life on the front tyres. And if you as a driver can save the tyre just a little bit every lap, then you may find yourself constantly in, say, the 211s and 212s rather than dipping into the 213s. So that's going to be the difficulty. But right now, with there being no major changes between our drivers, I think everybody's settling down to Riven. In fact, Marky Boy has dropped all the way to the back, and Terence is on an absolute charge right now. The British driver here going alongside Muddy into the chase, and he's gone to the outside. Buddy's gone defensive into the corner, and well, I think Buddy's just about nailed it, as we see some dust being kicked up, and Buddy doing a perfect job defensively against Terence. But I think it's a matter of time, as the FOE racing driver here of Terence is really on a charge, and he's going alongside, but he can't quite get it done. And the fastest lap has now been updated to a 2:10.2 on lap 2 by Ricci up front. As I was saying, some other drivers right now will be looking to tyre save, whereas other drivers will be looking to abuse the tyres whilst they're fresh and trying to break away. And you can see that Alex right now is falling back into the clutches of Racing Green. And as we hop on board the telemetry and take a look at what the respective tyre life side drivers are after only 2 laps, you can see that Ricci has got a bit more tyre life than the Hirocram, but both of our lead drivers doing a very good job at saving their tyres, whereas Alex, with a little bit of pressure right now from Racing Green, but not too much pressure. Again, managing those tyres very well, and in fact Racing Green is doing the same. So nobody really putting in a huge amount of tyre wear until you get to P6, where White Shark Jim right now has got some very heavily worn tyres, particularly that front right is heavily worn by comparison with all the other tyres we've looked at. And you can see on the fuel gauge that we are 75% fuel. And I think a number of our drivers here are going to be conscious of the fuel coming down as rapidly as it is right now, as we can see that Buddy, well, it's taken a huge chunk out of his tyres as well, and Terence behind him doing a very good job at saving his tyres is Terence. So I think Terence right now is just simply making sure to keep those tyres nice and fresh and might be trying to go long on this opening stint as we hop back to our timing sheets, and we can see that Marky Boy having a very difficult race and really struggling to keep it on the track going towards Skyline there. But I think Marky Boy just needs to settle himself down now. We know he's got a huge amount of pace, but he finds himself at the rear of the field and he's got it all to do. But meanwhile, at the front of the field, you can see that Herocram chasing after Ricci, but that gap up to 2 seconds right now, and 3 seconds back is Rule, and also Alex at 1.1 seconds, and Alex is pulling along a little bit of a train right now as we hop on board with White Shark Jim, who is in the pursuit here of P4 versus Green and Alex, and I think White Shark is just keeping his cool here, the DCC driver, just remembering that this race will be won over distance, not over a couple of laps, and he's going to go for the move, and no, he's not. He was just looking at it, he's perhaps intoning the move, but further back you can see that Terence has gone for the move at long last on Buddy, and he's made it stick. That was expected, but Terence has made it work. Fantastic job by the British driver, and the FOE driver now up into P7, and where can he move in the next couple of laps as we hop back and just ride on board with the move. So standard move up into the chase. He's going to go to the outside for the initial part of turn 20. Then coming into 21, he's just going to go deeper on the brakes. Now that braking point, as we hop to the exterior camera, you can see he's just got the momentum. And Buddy says, you know what, you've got it, you've made your claim, I'm going to let you go. And meanwhile, Marky Boy is going to have to do everything he can to try and seize on this. As we can see up at front, we have got, I think it's something along the lines of, well, almost 3 wide, I thought there at the rear camera shot. It looks as though Racing Green has not had the best of runs out of turn 1, and White Shark Jim has got a very good run versus Green, and I think White Shark's going to go for it on the inside, and he has nailed it. And you could see there that Awesome Alex, I think, is trying to give the slipstream to both drivers as well, playing a little bit of mental tactics with the drivers there as they both chase after his slipstream on the straights. So Alex still holding on to that P4, and now he's got a different rear defensive gunner, you could say, in the form of White Shark Jim. Of course, if White Shark wants to stay behind him, if he decides to try and get past Alex, then Alex is going to be on the bubble in terms of the promotion positions and not being eliminated. So these three are very close together right now, Alex, Green and White Shark, but not in that order, White Shark being in P5, but you could all see how it's going to flip over the course of the race. I think right now they just need to keep in mind that the more they squabble, they're going to be falling away from the leaders, and if any of the leaders make a mistake, and keep in mind that Alex is only 1.6 seconds down the road from Rule right now. Rule has not got anyone to pull him along, and in fact Rule, I think, is deciding to deploy some management here and trying to get the car to go a bit longer on this opening stint. Well, in Rule's mind, it's a simple case of I've just got to keep nailing in the laps and make sure that the guys behind keep on fighting one another, and the guys behind don't want to fight one another, of course. Now behind, Marky Boy has got the move done on Buddy. We're going to see if we can capture what happened there. It looks as though Buddy had to lift out, in fact, so perhaps there was an incident where Buddy simply made a mistake, but the story is that Marky Boy is up into P8 and MRC's Buddy is now down into P9. But meanwhile, up front then, as we come towards the end of the full lap right now, the lead is still being held on to by Hungary's Ricci, IGTSH's Ricci, I should say, in full. He is 1.8 seconds ahead of Herocram. That gap is coming down a tiny bit right now. I think Herocram's just starting to up the ante a little bit, but neither driver really showing any sign of weakness right now, and you do have to wonder whether this is what Ricci is doing, much like Marky Boy last time to Herocram. Is he just pacing himself to the British driver behind? As you see the rear of your camera shot there, Alex getting it all sorts of wrong, coming out of turn 1 and going very wide, and White Shark finds himself trying to drag race against Alex, and I think Racing Green here is saying, go on Alex, just stay in front, I'm going to give you a tiny little touch here, just stay ahead of him for goodness sake, as they're going to come up into turn 2. Will Racing Green go for the lunge on the inside? And he's coming into the corner, he's going to go for the lunge, and Alex is sent wide a little bit. I don't know if there was contact, we'll have to watch that back in a second, but we can see the result. Alex down into P6, and White Shark now is into P5 with Green up into P4, but White Shark's out onto the dirt, out on the outside of the corner, I should say, the marbles into the cutting, and Alex is coming back, and White Shark has picked up a half-second penalty for running wide at the cutting, and he's going to have to burn that. He will, of course, burn that over time. He doesn't have a designated zone where he, quote-unquote, has to burn the penalty. But what it means is Alex is back up into P5, and that must be absolutely frustrating for White Shark to know that he's lost 2 places and now he's got a little penalty to burn. And look in the rear of his camera and you'll see that Terence now is chasing after him as we ride on board with the British driver at this point. In fact, we are going to take a quick hop back to what happened there between the 3 drivers as they went into turn 2 on lap number 5. So as we ride on board then, this is Racing Green's perspective. You can see that as he's coming to the corner, he's essentially trying to get clear of White Shark by giving Alex a little bit of a push, but of course he's now got the momentum. So as he's coming up into turn 2 here, as he comes into the corner, is there contact? There's a tiny bit of contact and it just knocks Alex wide. I don't think there's going to be any major malice in that, or the fact that the stewards will need to be involved. I think it'll be treated as a racing incident. Of course, from Alex's perspective, that must be absolutely frustrating, but it's settled down a little bit now, and you can see that Green is doing everything he can to run away from the chase for P5, and Terence and Marky are all in this. In fact, Buddy with a 2.5 second penalty. I'm not sure where he's accrued that from, probably the dipper, if anywhere. Well, they're all chasing after P5, and Alex is now the man on the bubble with 19 minutes to go. Can he hold off the little fervent pack of Peugeots in his own Peugeot, as Racing Green has gone very wide out of the final corner? It's all kicking off, and we're not even at the halfway point right now. And that means I think it's time for us to take a very quick sip of water. If you haven't already, folks, make sure you've got plenty of refreshments for this one, because we've got plenty more to come and we don't lose our voice. And before we can take a sip of water, we need a comment on the fact that Marky is coming for it on Terence right now. And I think what's happened is Terence has got it all wrong at turn 1, because Marky is on a charge. And is he going to get it done into turn 2? Well, I hope he does at this point, because it will open up massively for the British drivers here. And, well, Terence just about holds on, but you've got to imagine Marky is really desperate to get back up into the top positions here. Having dropped back, we're just going to hop back to what happened then. So coming out of the corner then, did Terence get it wrong? No, he just had to lift because White Shark was there and he found himself out of position. So that's why it happened the way it did. That explains it, folks. Terence looked for a move on White Shark, but just didn't have the momentum and found himself bogged down coming out of turn 1. But Marky hasn't gained. And meanwhile, up front, I should point out that the gap between Ricci and Hirokram is still 1.8 seconds, so no change there. I'll let you know if anything changes. But the gap between Hirokram and Rule has opened up to 4.5 seconds. So the German driver here doing everything he needs to finish on the podium for this one, and that's more than enough. And Green at 3.4 seconds back right now, but not closing up. But Awesome Alex, meanwhile, 1.5 seconds down on Green, but he has cleared the guys behind. It should be pointed out as White Shark has now dropped to 1.2 seconds behind Alex, although it does look as though White Shark is better in the second part of the hill by comparison with Awesome Alex. So in the downhill part of the hill climb, that's where Awesome Alex seems to struggle compared to the guys behind, and White Shark is coming back at him, but he's a long way back and he doesn't have that toe. So he's got to now try and find a way to charge after these guys, charge away from these guys and find a way of getting his pace, but they're going to fight one another, so this will work to Alex's favour, and he'll keep his eye on the mirror for that as Terence looks to go round the outside of White Shark into the chase, and he's done it. Terence has done it. He's up into P6 and he's going to come back. Here's White Shark. As you can see, Marky Boy is also coming in. In fact, it looks like Marky Boy is looking for the move there as White Shark is into the pits, the first of our drivers to pit then, and now Marky Boy up into P7, as is MRC Buddy, who has pitted. And we should do a quick check of our drivers' tyre conditions at the moment, and what you can see is that Ricci up front right now with just over 30% fuel remaining. Those tyres looking rather worn, but not as worn as Hirokram, who's been saving some fuel by comparison, it should be noted. Meanwhile, Rule on similar fuel to Hirokram and Ricci, got a lot of tyre wear similar to Ricci's tyre wear. And then behind Racing Green, a little bit more tyre wear in that front right in particular. That is fuel about the same. Behind him, Alex. Rather well managed tyres, we should point out, on Alex's car, but he has used a lot of fuel in the battle, and in fact he's got the lowest fuel of our top 5. And then behind him, Terence has used a huge amount of fuel and has gone very deep into the cutting, and Marky Boy is going to try and come at him right now, but he doesn't have a move on here. It's very difficult to make a move unless the driver completely bins it into the cutting. And behind him, Marky Boy has saved a huge amount of fuel by being behind other drivers. Marky Boy has been deploying a fuel saving strategy and a tyre saving strategy, because that car is in brilliant condition in terms of its fuel and tyres right now. Marky Boy may be playing a bit of a strategic blinder here, folks. But behind them, White Shark, him coming to the pits, has gone for the fuel, and he's put on a set of racing softs, so he's going for the longer duration tyre, but of course he'll have less pace on the opening laps. And meanwhile, MRC Buddy has picked up a 5-second penalty somewhere, but he's refueled and put on the super soft. So that is how it lies with regards to our drivers' car conditions. And as we hop back to the action up front, going away from MRC Buddy and see where he comes out in a little bit, what you can see is Alex has definitely pulled away from the battle for P6 right now. So it's now become more of a battle for P6 rather than a battle for P5. But the question is, what can Terence do in this situation? Given that Terence has got less fuel in the car than everybody around him, Terence has really been pushing hard hard. Marky Boy, conversely, has not been pushing as hard and has been doing a lot of fuel saving. As we can see, hold on a second, we've got a load of dirt being kicked up, and Alex, I think, has got it wrong at the chicane, and in fact, well, somebody's got it wrong. He's catching up to Racing Green, so I think it was Green who's got it wrong, but they're all coming into the pits. It's literally as if it's a traffic jam being scheduled to come into the pits, and they're all forming a nice orderly queue. They're all piling in, and where does this cause everybody to play out? Well, I get the feeling that Ricci is going to be the first driver who comes out here, but Terence on that 15% fuel is going to be really punished for using so much fuel. And you can see that Hirokram, by comparison, has only refueled to 75% versus Ricci, so he has gained in the pit stop. But where this all plays out in the final stage of the race, what the halfway point now being crossed, Hirokram has closed that gap by almost 0.8 of a second just through the pits. But I think Ricci will now absolutely hammer it to pull away, and Rule has fallen further back from our front two drivers, now 6.8 seconds back from Hirokram. Marky Boy, meanwhile, through going long and continuing to go long, it should be noted, he's up into P4. In fact, not continuing to go along, he's come out and he's decided to refuel it light, and by putting on a fresh set of tyres, he's up into P4, and Racing Green is up into P5. So the order has been completely flipped, and Awesome Alex finds himself now back in P6 with an angry shark in the form of White Shark Jim from DCC chasing after him. So the whole order's been flipped upside down, folks, in the pit stops. Terence has dropped even further back. In fact, Terence had to refuel so much, he shot 4.2 seconds back from White Shark and finds himself being pursued by Buddy, who pitted one lap earlier, of course. But the one who's gained the most here in terms of the pit stops, it should be noted, is Marky Boy. But the question is now, you've got to wonder, what is Marky Boy going to do as he cuts a huge chunk out of the corner before the dipper there? Will he be needed to fuel save? And if so, is he expected to tuck onto the back of another driver and essentially try to finish in P5? Because he's got Racing Green not far behind him, but Awesome Alex is closing in on these guys. Now, with that in mind, what I'm thinking is this: Marky Boy probably knows he's got to fuel save to get to the end, because if you look at his fuel gauge by comparison with, say, Racing Green, so this is Marky Boy, who's on approximately 60%, versus Racing Green, who's on approximately 71% right now. I don't think Marky Boy is getting to the end on that tank of fuel by just pushing it. He needs to fuel save. But what he may do is try to tactically let Racing Green get closer and closer, pass him at the most convenient place on a straight where he can lift out a little bit, and then if the gap between Marky Boy and Awesome Alex is, say, 1.2 seconds at that point in time, then in Marky Boy's mind, all he needs to do is attach himself to the back of Racing Green like an angry crab and just simply sit there. He doesn't need to get past it, because if he finishes P5, he's not being eliminated tonight. Conversely, however, and you can already see this is happening in the form of Alex, who is on a charge right now and trying to catch up to the guys in front, 1.5 seconds back, now 1.4 seconds back. Alex has got it all to do. He's got to get towards Racing Green, and then he's got to get in a fight for P5. But of course, if Marky Boy doesn't play this right, then what he may find himself ending up in is a three-way battle for P4, or even a four-way battle for P4. And if that happens, then he's got to try and find a way of fuel saving whilst being slipstreamed along, and then try and get himself back in front on the final couple of laps. So it's all tactical from Marky Boy's perspective, whereas a lot of our other drivers are just going for the raw pace right now. But with that, what we can see up front, the gap between our two leaders is still not closing down. In fact, it's expanded to 1.2 seconds. So it's only expanded really by half a tenth, if that, over the last lap. And I think that Hirokram and Ricci are very closely matched on pace here. I don't think either driver is flinching right now. And it is over the hill that Ricci is the stronger driver. He's pulled out 2 tenths alone through the run over Skyline. And I think that's where Hirokram is just having the difficulty. And in fact, going through the dipper there, Hirokram's fallen back even more. So that is the difference between our drivers. As we see in the pursuit for P4 right now, well, Racing Green is trying to do everything, and in fact he's almost within slipstream range of Marky. Will he get it coming out of Forest Elbow here? I think he is going to get it as he comes down to the corner, so long as he doesn't get it wrong. And you can see that he's just taking a more aggressive line. He's really going for it, and he is not quite in the slipstream. In fact, he did not have a good run into Forest Elbow or coming out of it, so Racing Green is going to have to put in even more effort to catch up. So Marky Boy here pulling a bit of a one-hit wonder with regards to his strategy by comparison to everyone else, and just seems to be doing enough to hold on right now, where there being 10 minutes remaining in this race. And as they all come charging down towards the chase once again, while our lead driver's already passed it, of course, we can see White Shark is falling a little bit off at the moment from P6, but he's got some time to try and make up for this. And of course, remember, the tyre wear factor is going to come in right at the end of the race once again. Our drivers are going to be finishing this race on tyres that will be looking to be put to bed and put in their blankets once again. But the question will be, who's going to be the master of driving on worn tyres or saving their tyres so they're not too heavily worn by the end of the race? And my money right now is definitely on Marky having a little bit in the tank with regards to his tyre life. And I think Racing Green, he's expecting that Racing Green's just going to get a little bit closer. But of course, Racing's got a lot to do because he's falling back every time he should be gaining. On these straights, this is where he needs to be gaining as much as possible. In the corners, he needs to find some way of managing the time, and he is doing so, but it's on the straights in the acceleration zones where he seems to be losing out by comparison with Marky right now. And Marky, of course, running a car that's light on fuel by comparison, but he's got to fuel save Marky. So Racing Green here needs to find an answer to the situation, because otherwise he's not going to be able to get past and get himself clear of the chase behind. But as we come around up into the skyline once again, we are going to take a quick sip of water this time, because Terence is not going to interrupt us from doing so, as we flick over to Terence, who's currently in P8. And we can see in the back of the camera shot there, Buddy still making his way along in P9, falling a bit back from Terence at this point and still trying to burn a little bit of his penalty lap over lap. He can do so by lifting into corners and naturally braking into corners. The penalty system will wear it off gradually. But you can see that Buddy just doesn't quite have enough in the tank with regards to the pace by the looks of things, but still credit to him to continue on in this race and chasing after the other drivers. And of course, anybody can make a mistake. It's not over yet until the fat lady sings, as the saying goes. So we will see what's going to happen. Rule the unsung driver in terms of our top three right now. The German just sitting in P3 and minding his own business. But this time you can see, cutting away from that and looking back at P4 and P5, you can see that this time Green has definitely gained a lot coming out of Forest Elbow. So I think he's in that slipstream zone, and Marky Boy's already responding. Look how much he's gaining on Marky Boy. It's arm over fist here by Green, and I think Marky's realised, okay, Green, you've done it finally. Get past me and then pull me away and help me save the fuel to get to the end of the race, because the gap between you and Alex is 2.4 seconds, and I don't need to worry about this. Right, and there it goes. There's the overtake, and Marky Boy is playing the tactical race here, have we called it, and he's just going to simply try and sit behind Green right now and stay in that slipstream. Of course, he's got that 0.75 second zone to play around with, and Alex has gained on these two through all that happening. But of course, Alex now needs to combat the fact he is up against a driver who, whilst he's got less fuel, is using the slipstream of another car to pull him away. And on the straights here, that's going to be worth a good 5 to 6 miles an hour by the end of the straight, and that is where Alex is going to be losing out. But as you can see, Marky Boy here just keeping a nice bit of distance, and I think he knows how to pace himself to Racing Green, and that's why he's using this tactic. He knows he can just leverage the driver in front. But it's not to discredit the guys behind, and White Shark here being 2.4 seconds behind also Alex, and in going into the wall there out of turn 2, I think White Shark is starting to just fall off a little bit. I think the race is just running away from him a bit. It's unfortunate, as he was showing a lot of promise in the opening half. We'll keep one eye on him, of course. I think White Shark right now is almost out of the hunt for that P5 and that final promotion spot to round 3. But Alex is the one who everybody's going to have to keep an eye on then. Will he be able to close up, or alternatively, will Marky Boy do more than enough just simply to slipstream himself away from the clutches of Alex and falling back into that battle for P5? Because right now, Marky is doing everything he needs, and all he needs to do is chase Racing Green around the circuit. Meanwhile, up front, it should be pointed out, forgetting about our midfield drivers for a couple of seconds, although it's fantastic entertainment. Up front, Ricci, the Hungarian driver, he is just running away with things a little bit at the moment, 2.9 seconds ahead. We are going to do a quick telemetry check to see what is happening with the cars, and you can see he's got ample fuel in hand, and those super soft tyres are happy to continue on pressing on a little bit further. Meanwhile, behind, Hero Cram is managing the car in a similar state here, having a little bit more fuel by the looks of things, and Hero has been pushing to try and catch up, but he hasn't quite caught up, so he's settling down now. But he's settling for P2, subject to Ricci not making any mistakes, of course. And then behind them, you've got Rule, who is in P3 and comfortably in P3 still, and on a good amount of fuel. In fact, a lot of fuel, and I think he's just saving that in reserve should he need to absolutely floor it on the straights towards the end to make up for any mistakes. Racing Green, meanwhile, on approximately what is 32% fuel at the moment, charging along into turn 1 on lap number 12, and he has got good tyre life. But meanwhile, Marky Boy has saved his tyres massively compared to the other drivers in the top 5, and he is almost on the same amount of fuel as Racing Green. So Marky playing the tactical one here and really making it work. Meanwhile, Alex has got a lot of fuel in the car, but he's still trying to catch up to Marky Boy and Racing Green, who are effectively working together, albeit they're not in the same team, but they need to work together to keep Alex out of the fight and risk one of them getting demoted and eliminated tonight. Alex has got to try and find a way of overcoming that deficit, and I think he is closing that gap up gradually, although I say that, in fact, that gap has opened up to 2.6 seconds. Commentator, you don't know what you're talking about. I indeed don't in that scenario. Meanwhile, hopping back to White Shark Jim, heavily worn tyres at this point. I think White Shark has taken the tyre life out of the tyres a bit too soon, a bit prematurely, and that's why he's falling off of Alex's pace right now. It's just not working out for the British driver. And then Terence in P8, saving the tyres. In fact, he's done a very good job on the tyres and got a lot of fuel to burn, but he's got so much ground to make up right now. I don't think anything's going to come of it for the FOE racing driver by the end of this one. And meanwhile, in last at the moment, it's MRC's Buddy, who, with some heavily worn tyres but a good amount of fuel, I think he's just simply got enough to get him to the end. We'll wait and see, as the fastest lap has now been updated to a 2:10.1 as set by our race leader, Ricci. And that gap between himself and Hirokam has now dropped by 4 tenths over the course of this lap, but you do have to imagine whether it's just simply mind games and the two drivers pacing one another here, because neither one's really closing up enough right now. And Racing Green, as we come down to the final 4 minutes, still ahead, but you'll note that he is not gaining enough on Raw to put a challenge for P3, but he won't really want to put in a challenge right now. He will, of course, get more points from this one by finishing a higher position, but he will not want to compromise his ability to finish in a good spot and make sure he gets promoted to the next round. And that's the difficulty at this point, in the fact that he may want the extra points in the short term, but in the long term there's even more points available if you don't get eliminated right now. Marky Boy, the gap between Marky Boy and Racing Green, it should be pointed out, has opened up quite a bit, although it looks as though Marky Boy has taken a very different racing line into the corners, particularly turn 23 and turn 1 under braking. It seems as though Marky Boy is doing some lift and coast into the corners, or at least gradually braking into the corners, so doing half braking initially, whereas Racing Green is going for that deeper braking, and that's helping Marky Boy save the tyres and save some fuel, because you'll notice that that gap between the two drivers opens under braking initially, and then it condenses once again, and Marky Boy doing everything he needs to right now to stay with Racing Green. But of course, Alex, 1.8 seconds down. We've still got what is 2 laps remaining in this race. Could he spring a surprise hit? Well, if Racing Green was to get it wrong, alternatively, Marky Boy was to find himself getting too clustered up behind Racing Green, and it looks like gap is coming down a little bit. He is closing Alex right now, so don't think it's over yet, folks, because remember, if Green gets it wrong somewhere, then Marky Boy has to make a split-second decision. Does he pass Green, or does he sit behind him? And right now, I think Marky Boy wants Green to keep putting in the solid laps. So that's all on his mind as they come through in towards Skyline. As you can see, Alex clattering the wall there, and that's not going to do him any good in terms of time. In fact, that's going to lose him about 3 tenths worth of time, but it's not a fatal collision into the void in terms of fatal to his race aspirations. As we can see, our race leaders now coming out of Forest Elbow once again for the 13th time of Ask Him. But right now, as we hop on board of Racing Green's car and we look back, you can see that he's just doing everything he needs. But look at how Marky Boy is just simply carrying so much momentum into the corners. And I think Marky Boy must have practiced this in terms of his racecraft, because you can just see he's carrying so much momentum under braking compared to the other drivers. And I think it's all about that braking and managing those tyres. But still, enough of seeing his praises in particular, as we just continue to look back, and you can see he's not gaining because he's doing a lot of short shifting behind Racing Green's car. But in terms of that gap, Alex right now 2 seconds back, so it's all going to come down to that final lap for Alex if he's able to make a move. And we can see that some dust is being kicked up off of the end of the chase here, but I don't think it's anybody losing it in particular. And Alex is sending the kitchen sink at it in order to try and catch up, but he's not able to gain. In fact, running wide there out of the chase has cost him some time, and it will also put some dirt on his tyres for coming into the final corner as he moves on to his final lap then. So we're coming on to that 14th and final lap for our top 6 drivers. In fact, I think our top 7 are going to, well, I think all of our drivers are going to be doing a 14th and final lap, but nobody's going to be doing a 15th lap today. That would be a very aspirational to do so as we look through the field, and there's been no overall change. Buddy really falling off of Terence right now as they come on to that final lap. And we look around once again, and we can see that Marky Boy here continuing just to simply follow Racing Green in formation. As up front, meanwhile, we can see that Ricci managing that gap to Hirokam, the IGTSH driver, holding off the NXGN driver as much as he possibly can by simply pace matching. He's doing everything he needs to right now, and he's led this one from start to finish. It's been a very strong job from the Hungarian tonight, and you can definitely see why he's established his credentials to get himself into next week's round 3. Hirokam has had a good race, but again, I think he'll be frustrated because he'll know he's been the second place guy now for 2 rounds in a row. He'll be happy with the points, but he'll be wondering what could have been today if he just had a little bit more pace in the car and been able to get it on pole. But still, credit to him, he's done a fantastic job, and he should be proud of what he's achieved here today. Rule, the German driver, standing in for Timberlake at the last possible moment. It's worked out for the P1 driver here, and there's been no major drama. It's been a really quiet race for Rule, and in fact, quiet qualifying session as well. Done everything he needs to do today to keep the P1 racing crew together in the round number 3 and moving forward in the top bracket. Green and Marky Boy, well, they're still clustered together right now, and these two, again, they've done everything they need to, but Marky Boy has been the driver of the day, personally for myself, through just a huge strategic masterclass. He has played it well, and in fact, he's played it so well, he's now going to go for the move on Racing Green right at the end of the race. This is going to be unexpected from Racing Green, and I think Marky Boy is going to be finding himself just ahead into turn 20, but what about into the chase? He's going to go immediately defensive. Will Green come back at him, and they've got to be wary of the fact if they fight too hard here and take one other out, then we're knocking one out. Ricci coming across the line in P1. Then it's Hirocram in P2 as we cut back to Rule, who's going to be coming across the line in P number 3. Sorry for missing out on your leaders there, folks. And then behind it is Marky Boy, who's going to be finishing ahead of Racing Green. And that's our top 5. And Awesome Alex is the first of our drivers to be eliminated in P6. It wasn't to be for Alex today. And coming around out of the final corner in P7, it is Terence 322, eliminated today after a fantastic job in qualifying, but it didn't work out in the race. White Shark Jim, he's going to be frustrated potentially, as I think he's also run out of fuel right at the end. So White Shark coming home in P8. Well, that did not go as planned, but he'll be looking back and thinking, well, next time we can get a better result. And then last but not least, our drivers, MRC Buddy, completing our field in P9. But once again, our race winner, and congratulations first and foremost go to IGTSH's Ricci from Hungary. So we are just going to save the replay so we make sure we don't lose that replay, and we're also going to get a quick screenshot of the final results screen. So, final confirmation then, folks. 9 drivers started the race, 9 drivers finished it, and we can see that the race win went to IGTSH's Ricci by 3 seconds over NXGN's Hirocram. The British driver finishing ahead of our German driver who rounded off the podium, and that is P1 Racing's Rule, who finished 10 seconds behind. Marky Boy 92 picking up that P4 right at the end there of a strategic gamble and a masterclass, and he finished ahead of H Racing Green 91 in P5. Those 5 drivers are top 5 going through to round number 3. However, it is at this point that we unfortunately need to say goodbye to the following 4 drivers, albeit they did very well today, but just not enough to get themselves through to next round. Awesome Alex 1234 from Driver's Room, missing out by literally just getting caught out on the strategy today, but otherwise a solid performance from Awesome Alex. Terence 322 after a fantastic start and perhaps the most aggressive start of all our drivers, getting caught out by using so much fuel compared to everybody else in the opening stint, finishing P7. Then White Shark Jim from the DCC crew, finishing P8 in what was a difficult race and one that went from good to bad to worse. And then last but not least, MRC's Buddy, who just seemed to not be there on the pace today, but still, I think he had a good time, he had a good laugh and enjoyed himself. And that's what it's all about as well, having a good time and competing against some fantastic drivers. The fastest lap was achieved on lap number 10 by Ricci, our race winner, with a 2:10.134. So that's a summary of the results. And now, of course, we throw a question open to, would anyone like an interview? I think Hirocram might be up for it. So we're going to be catching up with our second place driver, Hirocram. So just give us 2 seconds, folks. We are going to need to do this off camera. If you can just bear with me with your patience whilst we get Hero into the interview box. Okay, so we're just waiting for Hero to join us up here in the commentary box. Hello, hello. Is that Hero, Gran?
Hi there.
So we just need to double check that the guys on stream can hear you. Ladies and gentlemen on stream, can you hear Hero?
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Yep, we can hear you loud and clear. So, firstly, Hero, congratulations on another second place in round number 2 this time. How does it feel?
Yeah, really good. Not my favourite track by a long way, so I'm kind of happy to get through so unscathed, as it were. Happy to stay as close as I did to Ricci. He was ridiculously fast, so yeah, pleased with the result.
So just taking a step back, because it was a fantastic drive by yourself, although I think you might be getting a little bit of a reputation as the second place guy, having finished behind Marky Boy in race number 1. But besides that, in qualifying, so what was the target in qualifying? Because you set blinding pace initially, but then Ricci sort of came out of nowhere at the end. Did that catch you by surprise, or were you sort of expecting not to be on pole, you just wanted to be on the front row?
I was sort of expecting it, to be fair. I think he must have picked up a penalty on his first lap, because if you cut a particular corner, you get a 3-second penalty. And judging by his first lap time, Ricci got that. So I knew he'd be fast from practice. He put in a stonking lap, to be fair to him. So again, just being on the front row was just kind of the aim, just to be out of trouble, really.
That makes sense. Were you happy with the fact you qualified P2, because that put you, if I remember correctly, on the inside for turn 1?
Yeah, like I say, it was just nice to be up there. I mean, the lights went out ridiculously fast, which I think caught a lot of people out, but thankfully we all got away with it. So yeah, it was just nice to be able to try and stay in the slipstream going up the hill and break away from third, really.
Definitely, because one driver in particular, who I don't know if you noticed this at the start, because obviously you probably had one eye forward and one eye backwards, Rule, who started P5, the German driver for P1 Racing, he literally leapt everybody at the start, and the only reason he couldn't get through to yourself and Ricci was because the drivers who qualified on the second row sort of shut the door on him before the braking zone into turn 1, because Rule just literally came out of nowhere on the start.
Yeah, well, I had my eye on Raw because I just did a bit of practice with him, so I knew it'd be fast. And I had my eye on Marky Boy, and I don't know exactly what happened, but I could see he had a bit of a shocking start. So he did well to recover because he was on the bubble for a long time. So from what I could see, so well done to him for sure.
Well, definitely. But coming away from Raw and back to your own race, so the question is, with regards to racing after Ricci, we saw throughout the race how yourself and Ricci seemed to have this oscillating gap between you. Sometimes it was beyond 2 seconds, sometimes it was a little bit less, then it went up a bit. Were you just trying to pace match Ricci, or was it a case that you were throwing everything at and you just couldn't seem to break his pace?
A little bit of both, to be fair. I mean, I think he had a few tenths on me in ultimate pace, but the plan was just to kind of hang close to him, try and save a bit of fuel where I could. And if I could jump him in the pit stop by saving fuel, then great. If not, then P2 was enough ultimately. So, again, I was happy just to stay out of trouble as much as anything. But obviously, there's a huge potential for sticking it in a barrier at this track at just about every corner. So the aim was just to drive within myself to a degree. So no risks.
Oh, very true. And it was a very considerate and smart drive in the end to come home in P2. And just on the strategy element, just to give our viewers an idea, how much tyre saving and fuel saving was involved from your perspective? Because we saw Marky Boy in particular pull a huge tactical blinder by fuel saving and tyre saving to a massive degree. But away from him, from your perspective, were you having to do a lot of tyre management and fuel management, or were you just sort of throwing that to the window and thinking, you know what, just do a little bit here and there?
The tyres, you have to be very conscious of the front tyres, obviously being a front-wheel drive car. So brake bias to the back, take it easy on the brakes, just try and save the fronts a little bit because that's a few tenths of pace later in the stint. in terms of fuel, if you're sat in the slipstream, there's a huge potential for saving a bit of fuel. But if you're out of it, then you do have to kind of work the engine a little bit, just try and keep up. So just a bit of shifting in like the higher revs just before it hit the limiter, just to save here and there. But for the most part, it was just flat out. It was an easy 15-minute stint, nice in the middle, so not too bad really.
Oh, that's good. And pardon me, when you saw that you come out, I believe you came out 1.1 seconds behind Ricci. Was there the temptation then and there to really try and push hard for perhaps a lap just to get yourself in the slipstream? Or did you just decide, you know what, I'm going to be pushing it too hard? And as you said earlier, putting it in the wall if I get it wrong.
Yeah, there was a few corners of can I push super hard and just reach that 7.5 tenths barrier just to get back into the slipstream and take it from there. But I think it was the next lap around, I made a bit of an error coming back down the mountain and lost a few seconds. So, or not a few seconds, sorry, a few tenths. So after that, I was just, no, I'm just going to bring it home from here. So,
Alrighty. Well, with that in mind, and I think that's one of the things that is absolutely fantastic about your racecraft that I've noticed. You seem to have this mentality of, you know what, just get a good result, get myself through to the next round, and that's what we've seen 2 rounds back to back now. How are you feeling for round 3 next week when we go off to Tokyo? We're in the Audi R8s, and I believe we have rain as well.
yeah, it's going to be a bit of a lottery for sure, but just going to get a bit of practice in, see how we go, and again, try and drive smart.
Well, we look forward to seeing what you can achieve next week. But until then, we wish you all the best and congratulations once again on a well-earned 2nd place tonight.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much.
Cheers for joining us in the commentary box.
Yeah, bye.
Bye. Alrighty, folks, so that was Hero Cram, who put in a fantastic job to come home P2, but now we're going to have a quick interview with Ricci, our race winner. So we're just going to get Ricci if we can, folks. We're just trying to find him on our friends list. Give us 2 seconds. We're in a little bit of a... There he is. So we're just going to see if we can get him in. We'll give it a couple of minutes just in case there's any technical items he needs to sort out on his end. But what an absolute cracking race. And to give you an idea, in a week's time, we head to Tokyo, ladies and gentlemen, for GT3 Audi R8 in the wet. And it's going to be an even bigger challenge. Keeping in mind that it is the top 5 drivers from this lobby, plus the top 6 drivers from lobby 1 in the top bracket that all go together for a massive showdown at Tokyo. And I will show the results once again. There you go, folks. As you can see, Ricci finishing ahead of Hero Cram and Rule rounding off the podium. Marky Boy and Racing Green rounding off the top 5. And I will shortly be sending on the race results to our organisers, so that way they've got them available to them for organising round number 3 next week. as we say hello to MS Too Fast for you, and also Club 100's Jano in the chat. If I have missed anyone tonight, I do apologise. I think I missed DJ Rice 83 as well. And also P Gib 92. Alrighty folks, well I don't think we are getting Ricci. We're going to give him 1 more minute just in case he is able to make it in. But if not for any reason, it's not to worry. It's just one of those cases where he's not available. And instead we will start to bring the programme to a close. Perhaps he's too busy celebrating to take us up on our invite to come up here and have a little chat. He drove very well today, so I completely understand it. He probably just wants to be able to enjoy things. Just going to drop him another message saying, and well done on P1. Alrighty folks, well we are going to close the lobby because I don't think we're going to be getting Ricci unfortunately. But that was the story for round number 2, lobby 2 top split. Ricci, Hirocram, Rule, Marky Boy and Racing Green advancing to round number 3. Alex, Terrence, White Shark and Buddy falling for elimination. Come back next time, in a week's time, at exactly the same time, that's 3 times in one sentence, for round number 3, which is going to be the Audi R8s at Tokyo. Who will get promoted into the grand finale? You'll have to tune in and find out. But I've been your host, Paul Walsh, TX141 or Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, as always, stay on track. Good night.